Welcome everyone, this is VG.Cantina, your video game podcast. I am your host, M, and we're here to talk about video games. First off, I want to apologize for not having a podcast yesterday. There really wasn't a lot of news I was too interested in talking about, and I had continued my journey in Mario Sunshine. And since I didn't really have a lot to talk about previously for either of those things, the news or Sunshine in general, I didn't really want to put out a podcast that was going to be like maybe 15 or 10 minutes long. I really wanted to talk about more stuff. But we got some more news now, and we got, I've still been playing Mario Sunshine, but I've also came up with just kind of a thought while I was playing it, kind of just thinking about other things. So let's go ahead and get started. So we got a couple pieces of information for news today. Let's go ahead and start off with our first one. Looks like we have Christopher Judge, who was the voice of Kratos in God of War 2018, will be voicing Black Panther in the Marvel's Avengers War for Wakanda. I think that is a great pick. I think Christopher Judge is an amazing voice actor. I know he has initially expressed his distaste for voiceover in video games, because there's that whole story where he was tricked into playing the part as Kratos for a video game. He thought initially it was a TV show or something, but he was convinced later on to take the role, and it turned out fantastic. I don't know if he still has such thoughts now, but it looks like he's further going into more video game type stuff, which I think is great. He's again, very good voice actor. I think he'd be a great addition to a lot of the gaming voice acting sphere. I know a lot of the voice actors kind of seep into other games, and right now we kind of have just a handful of recognizable voices in most games. So having Judge kind of go into that and being part of more things adds more variety to that. And just another quick tidbit with the War for Wakanda. Looks like initially the report saying it was around 25 hours, but that was a mistake. It's the total game with addition to that's 25 hours. More of a guesstimate would be that the expansion, the free expansion, I think it's free, is about 7 hours long. And this is focused on obviously Black Panther, who's a lot more older and a lot more progressed through the years. I would imagine it'd be kind of like how Spider-Man PS4 was, where you didn't see the beginning of Peter's journey. He was more really into it at that point. So we'll see how that goes. I know there's been a lot of tumultuous things with Marvel's Avengers, but we'll see how this goes. This is looking to be a nice addition, so hopefully that turns out pretty well. But we will see. All right, and then on our next bit of news, it looks like we have Netflix in the gaming news sphere today, or I believe yesterday. It looks like they are going into the video game services. So finally, when we use the Netflix for games, we can actually properly use it when they do eventually start offering games within their service. Whether or not that will be good or bad, probably bad, but we'll see. Because they're probably going to mess it up in some way or form unless they get some big time games and proper pricing for them, where it essentially becomes a Game Pass type of deal. We'll see how that goes. How would they be successful? I guess we can talk about that a little bit. How would they be successful? How will the phrase Netflix for games actually be what people think it is, and not just flutter in the wind, die out, and then we can't really use that phrase anymore because it would just be connected to a negative product that had occurred. Well, obviously, it needs to be like Game Pass. It needs to offer a variety of games at a monthly charge that is reasonable and allows you to play them how you would play regular games. I don't think it needs to be as expensive as Game Pass. It just needs to have some things because, again, it's just getting started, and I believe Game Pass has been out for about 4 years, so you can't really burn out real quick. You have to build up your portfolio, build up a good service that's really good and polished and whatnot, and then grow as it goes on. You see that in many other examples when certain games or companies come out, and they just kind of compete with what was there. It's kind of like when there was a whole bunch of MMOs trying to beat out WoW, and they all died until Final Fantasy came out, which was terrible at the beginning, but then they started from square one, and slowly added it until now it's the MMO, and it took close to several years to them to usurp WoW. Same thing with I guess even Microsoft, where you had Sega, Sony, and Nintendo doing their games for quite some time, and then Microsoft comes in, and it took them many years to finally get to where they are now as a respectable position in the gaming ecosystem. You don't want to do it like Google or Amazon's doing it, where they kind of try and get into the ring and go face to face with these large corporations or large businesses and say we're the same, when in reality you're really, really not, and the product you're made is really, really bad. The Netflix really has to look at this, understand this. They've seen failure almost twice or three times from other companies. Just do the exact opposite this time. Also, just a quick thought, kind of as I'm racking my brain here. This is also a possibility. Netflix could partner with some game studios. Now, I don't mean buy them out, obviously, because I don't want Netflix to buy any game studios, because they will most likely be shut down, because I don't have a lot of hope for this. But this is me assuming them taking proper steps and thriving. What they could do is they could form a partnership like Xbox did with Disney Plus, where they bundled Game Pass and Disney Plus, where you got, I think, Disney Plus like 1 or 2 months free if you got a certain package of Game Pass. They could do that with Sony, because I believe at some point in the year or last year, if I'm remembering, in addition to Sony trying to buy Crunchyroll or whatnot and get a really strong hold or stranglehold in the anime type pillars or whatever, they made a deal with Netflix to put a lot of their movies on Netflix for a couple of months or a year or so, and then move them on to Disney or something, or other streaming services. But Netflix got the initial deal where they would get the things first, which was a big deal, mostly because Netflix, from what I saw, spent a whole lot of money for something that isn't permanent to them, and that made headlines. So maybe I don't know, maybe that was like a show of good faith to where Netflix was willing to work with Sony and hopefully kind of pave the way of maybe getting some of Sony's IPs to appear on Netflix. And maybe that's a way where they can kind of drum up hype, because there's a lot of PlayStation games that aren't on other systems other than PlayStation, which is a nice segue into the next and final piece of information that we have here, and that is the Steam Deck, previously rumored as the Steam Boy or something like that. It's basically a Switch Pro, like an actual Switch Pro. It's kind of funny. It looks sleek. I do have some issues though, but for what I'm seeing, it's definitely a Switch. A little bit of information on it. Looks like the initial price point is $399 for 64 gigabytes, and then it goes up to there from $529 for 256 gigabytes to $649 for 512 gigabytes. I feel like the $399 is going to be what people get. Granted, it is pretty expensive, because I think the PS5 and the Xbox X Series X is like essentially that price point, and I don't know if people want that for the Steam Deck, because it is a new product, and the last thing that Steam put out was the Steam Box and the Steam Controller, and both of those were hot garbage. But we'll see. There's been some hands-on with it, I believe, from IGN, where they got a chance to play it. It's seeming like the people that tried it liked it. They said it is comfortable, and if you were to see this thing, it looks like a Switch again, except it has the control scheme of a PlayStation controller, where you have the analogs essentially lined up, and then the D-pad and face buttons slightly above it. There are like touch pads or whatever under the analogs, and then just a couple of other options buttons near the bottom of the controller. My biggest issue. Oh, and there's also back buttons on the back as well. I believe 2 on each side, and then the triggers and bumpers as well. It has that. My biggest issue with how it looks is that it looks like a lot of the buttons and the analog sticks are really pushed up to the very top of the controller. So it looks like your hand movement is going to be kind of focused near the top. So I don't. That doesn't look comfortable to me. And depending on how the thing is weighted, it might be kind of awkward to hold in hand, because I can't imagine this being light. I can imagine this being fairly hefty. And if there's a lot of weight on the bottom and your hands are kind of focused on the top, I can see there being some cramping as well. I mean, I know I looked at the Joy-Con to compare it, and the left-hand Joy-Con with the D-pad. The D-pad is kind of it is up there on the controller. It really is. I don't think it's as bad as the Steam Deck, but it is pretty up there. Granted, the face buttons are towards the bottom middle on the right side of the controller, so at least they have that going for it. But we'll see. I most likely will not be able to get it, just for pricing issues and the for sure chance that this will be scalped. But it's an interesting thing. It looks like it will be available to run Steam, and they did make a note or a point to kind of point this out, that it is a computer, so you can run other devices or other programs on it. So you could feasibly run Xbox Game Pass on it, or any other program like PlayStation Now or whatever, or even the Epic Store maybe. Who knows? But the basic of basic things with this is that you can play PC games on this, and that's interesting. So we'll just have to see what this goes through. I think I don't know if this thing is gonna fail or survive. I'm optimistic. I hope this survives, because it feels like the Nintendo Switch has dominated the handheld market to the point where we don't even consider there being a handheld market. And I feel like with a lot of the very kind of, I don't want to say bad, but kind of ignorant decisions that the Switch or Nintendo kind of pulls with the Switch, and how lackluster it kind of actually is, having competition hopefully breeds good things with it. So that's why I kind of wanted to survive. Also, just kind of like a funny thing, I was looking at this. I know for a fact that a lot of Switch fans have been complaining and kind of whining about wanting Persona to be on the Switch, even though they are getting, Shin Megami Tensei solely on the Switch, exclusively, so it won't be on PlayStation. And with this coming out, there will be a Switch lookalike that has a Persona game on it, because Persona 4 Golden's on PC, that's not on the Switch. And I can imagine if you bring that up to anyone that's a hardcore Switch fan, they would probably die inside a little bit, or at least complain endlessly. And that's probably a funny thing to kind of mess with some people. But overall, that is the news that I have to run down today. It's going to be interesting to see what the future holds for a lot of these kinds of things. Because, the Christopher Judge, it's going to be interesting to see how he portrays Black Panther. With Netflix, it's going to be interesting to see what moves they do, if they do any good moves at all. And then with the Steam Deck, it's going to be interesting to see whether this thing survives or dies or whatever. But we'll see. And that concludes the news segment for today. And right now we're moving into the main topic of our show. So as I said, I've been playing Mario Sunshine. When I initially talked about Mario Sunshine, I was just purely talking about the game, and I really wasn't able to talk too much about it, just because kind of my thoughts were very superficial, and they still are. I wasn't really able to elaborate too much on it, but as I've been continuing to playing it, I kind of got more thoughts in the general sphere of platformers. So obviously the Mario games are essentially platformers, or at least their main games are. And I was playing this and enjoying it. I was kind of reminiscing about the era of platformers, which was essentially post Super Mario 64 and pre, I would say, I think Wii or PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era, maybe sometime in between there, where after 64, a whole bunch of Mario clones essentially came up and gave rise to the platforming. I guess maybe you can say golden age, because there were some really good ones there. And I'm just kind of here thinking about the mass genocide of all these mascot platformers, and kind of looking at, what did they fail to do. And I think the first thing is that they kind of essentially tried to become too much of a Mario clone without understanding what it means to be a Mario game. It seemed like what they thought was, if we have a mascot and just have basic platforming, that will do. Which I don't think so. Mario is a good mascot, but he was honed over several years until he essentially became a very vanilla mascot. Essentially, you can put him wherever you want, and people would like him. You can see that with him being placed in Mario Kart, when initially it wasn't really about Mario, or the Mario sports games, where they didn't even use the Mario character. They kind of used like an old fat Italian guy and called him Mario. But then it turned into just being Mario, and entering in a gateway into several games because he was a friendly character. But that didn't mean that those games were successful because of Mario. It just made a very easy gateway to those games. Those games had to be good. And a lot of these platformers during the platforming age did not make good games. They just made colorful characters with okay to bad platforming, and kind of just sent them off into the world to either have a sequel or just die outright. And I guess this stems from very much movement. If you play Mario 64, I remember talking in the previous podcast where a lot of people, I mentioned a lot of people have these kind of rose tinted glasses for Mario 64, and playing it now, it's pretty rough. But what is definitely consistent and has kept throughout the entire series of these 3D Mario games is the movement of the game. It's very concise. It's been just perfected to a T throughout these games. I mean, I don't think much has changed in terms of a lot of the movement. It's been added or kind of shaped a little bit differently. But if you get the movement from Mario 64 and put it in Odyssey, I'm pretty sure it's almost close to the same. And then these mascot games didn't really think about this movement. Sure, some of them might have had interesting platforming levels, but the movement itself was essentially run and jump. Run and jump, run and jump, run and jump. Maybe some might have like pixel perfect jumps or whatever to make it kind of interesting, but in reality they just kind of were blah. It's just kind of the word that comes to my mouth. Like Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. I think that kind of had 2 games maybe and fizzled out. Bubsy was a trash fire. What else? Tumba, I think, had 1 game on the PS1 or something. Granted, that was before 64. And also, I think it was a 2D platformer. So maybe that doesn't count. There was Gex. Gex, I think. Although Gex had several games. But that did not survive the massacre. The ones that did, or at least survived the longest, were definitely the PlayStation mascots. The Xbox mascots did not survive. I think there was only one that I remember, and it's Blinks the Time Cat, which I like his look, Blinks. And I remember seeing this Game Informer magazine where they go and state, move over Mario and Sonic, because it's Blinks' time, and Blinks had 1 game and then completely died. That cat did not have 9 lives. He had 1 life, and it died on the spot there. You know what? Also, even Conker. Granted, I don't think that's Conker's fault. I think Conker is a very well-made platformer with it might not have the best movement options, but the style itself is kind of reminiscent of Banjo-Kazooie because again they were made by the same company, but also Banjo-Kazooie. But I think that this mostly comes from the ineptitude of Xbox itself. I remember hearing kind of in this previous week, Phil Spencer was talking about backwards compatibility and them seeing, what games they might bring back about that, which I kind of find is just PR speak, might even be a load of crap because they know, we know, everybody knows Banjo-Kazooie and Conquer are the most requested IPs from Xbox. That does not include Halo or Gears of War because those are always going to come out. You have other games like Fable or God, what else does Xbox have? Fable. Sure, let's go with Fable. Or whatever other things. I can't even think of any. But the ones I know are Banjo and Conquer, and they don't bring them out. They had that one Banjo game, Nuts and Bolts, which was okay, but it was not a Banjo game, and it was very poorly received. And Conquer, which they just use his dead corpse as marketing material for their other failed creations, like the augmented reality glasses, which never came out and were just terrible, or the Project Spark, which was a failed, essentially Dreams type project, but never came to fruition. So you have all those failed platformers from the Xbox side. But from the PlayStation side, you have essentially the top three, which was Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper, and Ratchet and Clank. Obviously, Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper are dead. Not completely dead. I don't think they have given up hope on those. But at least from certain things, because I know I believe Naughty Dog has stated they are interested in a Jak and Daxter from an interview. They are kind of aware of Jak and Daxter and might be interested in it. They just the projects they have going on with the company, they can't really do that now. But it might be something in the future that they are looking at. And then Sly Cooper had the fourth game by Sanzaru, and then Sanzaru got bought out by Facebook or Oculus or whatever. So now you don't have a creator for that. And then you have Ratchet and Clank. So you have one that had 3 games and a racing game and then kind of stopped, but it's still kind of in the minds of its original creator. You have one that had 4 games, the fourth one being made by a different company that was interested in it, but that company got bought out, so now you don't really have anybody interested because Sucker Punch really hasn't made any kind of sound or movement towards Sly Cooper. They're kind of really interested in the games that they're making right now. And then you have Ratchet and Clank, which is, in my opinion, the mascot for PlayStation. Nintendo has Mario. They have a lot of other IPs, but their mainstay is Mario. Xbox has Halo. And then PlayStation, whenever you see any sort of marketing material, it's mostly their list of IPs. They don't have a set character that they use as set piece, and I think it should be Ratchet and Clank. Astrobot, which is a new platformer that hopefully gains traction, might be that mascot because I'll talk about that after I finish this Ratchet and Clank thing. But I believe Ratchet and Clank should be the de facto PlayStation mascot because it's always been there. Other than PlayStation 1, it's always been there. It's always been a highlight for PlayStation, and it's beloved by its creator. They haven't given up on it, and they keep innovating with it, and they keep showing off the PlayStation with it. And the Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart essentially legitimized the PlayStation 5, like what Mario 64 did for the Nintendo 64, and what Halo Combat Evolved did for Xbox. Ratchet and Clank essentially, in my opinion, did for the PS5. This game needed to have. This game needs the PS5, and the PS5 needed this game. So that's why I think, the PlayStation should really be touting Ratchet a lot harder and making it the face of the company. Especially since I guess the reason why it was never really the face of the PlayStation is because they never owned it. Or I guess they never properly owned it. Because Insomniac was a second party, even though that term second party is trying to be phased out by companies, but PlayStation didn't own Insomniac, and Insomniac wanted to be independent, and they have made games for other developers. So who knows where Ratchet and Clank could have gone. Granted, PlayStation might actually own the IP for Ratchet, but they never officially owned. Like, it was never official, I guess, in the public's eyes. But now they do own Insomniac, and now they are a proper first party. And now, there really is no excuse, because Ratchet is alive and well. Ratchet did amazing with the PS5. Ratchet has been a mainstay in PlayStation history. Make Ratchet, the go-to. And it's great because, I believe Ratchet and to another effect, Rivet are great characters for people to kind of get to know and be accustomed to, kind of like with Mario. So why not? And a new platform that has come out from the ashes of Studio Japan is Astrobot from Team Asobi. So just real quick run back. Studio Japan has essentially been dissolved into PlayStation, and then kind of like the upper management level of Studio Japan went off to make their own company. They took a couple of talent with them to those companies, independent companies in Japan, but a good portion of Studio Japan either stayed with Team Asobi or moved to the XDev team, because Studio Japan, while being its own studio, did a lot of work and help with a lot of other studios, such as Bloodborne or some other works with like Final Fantasy, I think, or with Square Enix or something like that. But now they're essentially gone. They've either become Team Asobi or the XDev thing for PlayStation, I think. And now we have Team Asobi, whose main and only game is Astrobot. They made Astro's Rescue Mission for the VR. It was a fantastic game. It's severely underappreciated by people because it's written off as just a VR game. But it's an amazing platformer. Immediately recognized as, this is just as good as Mario by a lot of people that played it, if not better in some aspects, but held back by its VR home. Even though I'm happy that VR has such amazing titles and is completely necessary for it to thrive. But it's just sad to see Astrobot essentially kind of kicked to the wayside just because it's VR. And then we have the PS5 come up, and then all of a sudden we have this tech demo, in air quotes, because it is a full-fledged game, in my opinion, and it's better than most games that came out around it, which is Astro's Playroom, a gigantic Mario Odyssey-esque platforming thing centered around Astrobot in the setting of a PS5 with so much charm and love and joy about the PlayStation with it. And people got to play it, and it's universally praised. It is amazing. It's getting a lot of recognition, except for the fact that there are people that kind of just put it off to the wayside because it's a tech demo. Even though a lot of people say, no, this is way more than a tech demo. This is a game. Not a full-fledged game, but a game that beats out a lot of other games that are fully fledged and $60 and whatnot. But this game blows them out of the water because of how amazing it is. But there's still that caveat. I was like, it's a tech demo. It's a lot more small and compact, so it has that benefit of not having to be elongated out. But I think now that Team Asobi is officially recognized PlayStation studio, they're going to get the large financial backing from Sony. They're going to increase their dev team for the studio, and their next big Astrobot game, which we're all assuming because their logo is even the Astrobot icon, is going to be massive. It's going to be hopefully the essentially the Mario Odyssey, or at least Mario Galaxy of Astrobot, to where it's a giant game. It's an amazing game, and for a lot of people, it's going to see whether or not the dissolving of Studio Japan has a silver lining with Team Asobi, because I know a lot of people aren't going to accept the fact that Studio Japan got dissolved. Granted, for me, that kind of, they were my favorite studio of all time, and I was really sad to see them go. But I am with a lot of other people that kind of were very much into PlayStation and didn't just remember them for the games, like looked at them in their totality of the studio, kind of saw this, even during 2016, 2017, with the release of The Last Guardian, like the writing on the wall was kind of there. You kind of saw them getting pushed to the wayside or having developmental issues. I mean, to me, the final nail of the coffin was, I think it was 2016, because either 2016, no, yeah, I think either 16 or 17. It was whenever Gravity Rush 2 was coming out, and they didn't even have it in their show. They just had it in the quick sizzle reel at the end, and it popped out, and they never mentioned it, which was really sad, because Gravity Rush as a series is an amazing game, and that the director is gone, so the Gravity Rush 3 is essentially never going to happen unless, again, they're making their own studio, and Sony can always hire them to make a new Gravity Rush 3. But as I said, that's very highly unlikely, and it makes me very sad. But saw this coming, 4 or 5 years ago. And a lot of these people that say they like Studio Japan, or say they are 100% behind them and blame Sony for this, you can obviously tell this is more to kind of ride against Sony than understanding the situation, because while yes, this is sad, yes, this is unfortunate, people who knew it was gonna be the end of it. It was so obvious, and it really should not have come to a shock. It was just a matter of when. But like I said, the silver lining that people are kind of waiting on is Team Asobi's next game, because if that game is, amazing, on par with Astro's Playroom, but with an actual game size, essentially, then there will at least be that relief of sadness from them, that from the ashes of Studio Japan we have this new studio that adds to the portfolio of Sony with platformers. Because I think platformers, and what sparked my discussion with all these platforming, is that I think platforming is coming back. I think it's because during the golden age of platformers, and I use golden age loosely, the when it was so oversaturated, people just hated platformers. After that, that's why so many platforming mascots died. It's because people didn't want to play them, and then came the rise of the FPS Call of Duty clone thing that finally is slowly starting to die out, or has to some capacity. And now, after people have kind of like forgotten about all the platformers, and with a whole bunch of Marios that came out, these rise of really focused and well done platformers are starting to feel needed and wanted even. So with them having Ratchet, with them creating Asobi, that would be great. Like I said, I didn't see Blinks the cat too much. I just know the meme of it. I should really kind of watch it because I like his design and it's interesting. So hopefully Xbox, I don't think they'll bring him back, but it might be pretty cool to consider because, again, he's a meme. I don't know how good the game was, but if they bring him back, that could be kind of hype. Obviously, Conquer and Banjo-Kazooie, granted, I don't think they are because everybody wants that, and because everybody wants it, they're not going to do it. That's what a lot of these companies kind of do. If people want it, they're not going to give it because why would they do that? Why would they want our money? But yeah, that's just my thoughts on platformers that I kind of had. It kind of derailed a little bit into kind of like what was happening over at Sony. Obviously Nintendo, they got that on lock. Their platformers are amazing. And then Xbox doesn't have anything, hopefully, but no. And then also the indie scene. Hat in Time, fantastic. I wonder if they'll make a sequel to that. I don't know if they've ever talked about that. Probably some other things I haven't double checked. But 2D platformers for sure have picked up. With all the Pixar, like Shovel Knight or Hollow Knight or a lot of Knights. or some of the ninja games that are kind of like Ninja Gaiden. But platformers are starting to see the rise. Oh, Celeste as well. Platformers are starting to see a rise in popularity, and it's really cool that now now it's kind of understood. It's not the mascot; it's the gameplay. Once the gameplay is solid, then you can make whatever mascot you want, and then that will carry you throughout. And with that, that's all I have to talk about this podcast. This podcast was your platforming special, with some news mixed in. Thank you all for listening. I should be doing a podcast tomorrow. We'll see. Hopefully, I will be able to do it. It'll be around the same time as this one. Again, still trying to see. I think for sure Sunday I'll be taking off throughout the weeks, and then every day I should try and make a podcast. Like I said, I have other things to do, like schoolwork and work and all this other type of stuff. But I've been enjoying these. I think this might be my 6th or 7th episode, so to me that's a very personal win, even though nobody listens to it, and I doubt anybody's even hearing this. But it's a good win for me because I'm actually doing this kind of things. But without further ado, without just dragging this on, thank you all for listening. I will see you next time. Enjoy your day.